Hi everybody, happy Monday. Today is the 15th. Some things in the state are opening now. Some retail stores, some barbershops, some salons. We're not opening anything here yet, and we are working on plans as to how to be able to do that, and social distance and keep you and all of us safe. You'll be getting notices later about what the plans are, because I don't even know them. This week's programming. Tonight is a great concert. Sturgill Simpson, if you like country bluegrass, he is excellent. He's a young guy. He's playing. I have the opera tomorrow. The new thriller Invisible Man tomorrow night, Tuesday night. I watched it last night. I highly recommend Wednesday afternoon. I know a lot of you don't like to watch TV during the day, but Spike Lee's new movie, Da 5 Bloods, is really excellent. It's kind of a mystery. The 5 Vietnam vets go back to Vietnam to find this treasure that they helped hide. But it's not really about that. It's about how black Vietnam veterans were treated when they came home. It's very powerful. There is a lot of cursing. It's Spike Lee. But it's very, very good. Someone requested Knives Out, the movie, again, so I'm running that. We have another National Theater play, Small Island. Sing along, of course, The Shelley Show. Friday night, I don't know what the Andrew Lloyd Webber musical is yet. I think, based on the way they're putting up previews, I think it might be Evita, which is great. And I'm working on next week, so I'm not sure. If there's anything you want, again, please call me. I run out of ideas just by myself. So I appreciate the phone calls and the letters that we get from all of you. I know by the time I come on today, this week is already done. So, but I am working on next week. So please call me if there's anything you really want to see, or if you even have an idea, I will try to. Now, one big thing coming up next week. We are going to attempt a virtual book club. And I'm not sure of the details yet, but the book is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. It's okay if you can't get the book. I am recording the book. So you'll see next week's schedule starting the 21st. There's 35 to 45 minutes every day where you're going to hear portions of that book. So far I've done it, and I know Laura's reading to do some, and I have a few other people who signed up. Number one, if you have an interest in doing a chapter, just know it's going to be in this room, and you'll have the book in front of you, and I can let you read a chapter or two out loud. Second, and I will put a notice on the in-house channel, if you want to participate in the book club, I don't have all the details worked out yet, but please call me or the front desk. I'll leave a sign-in down there. At this point, what I think I'm going to do is we're going to read the book for however many of you who sign up to participate. I'm going to give you a question or two, which when we're done, you can then answer, and then we'll be in here, or I'll be in here, reading your answers and discussing it. Maybe I'll see if I can get a phone set up so we can call, or maybe by that time we can have a few people in the room. So think about it. If you obviously can order the book yourself if you want, from the library or from Amazon. It's Never Let Me Go, but you can also, watch me read it and listen to me read it. We're not professional readers though, so it's a struggle. I only read baby books out loud to my great niece in Arizona on the phone. So we're going to try that, because even after we lift, restrictions. We are still going to be restricted. We are still going to have social distancing requirements and sanitizing requirements as per 5-star. So we're not even sure how we're going to do some programming that we're all accustomed to. So I'm trying. So we're going to try this one first. And why did we pick this book? Because I've read it numerous times and I know it well. That's the simple answer. If you have a suggestion for another book that's not so long, please let me know. Okay, now what's going on? Well, a lot. Now, let's talk about vote by mail. I got mine for the primary. If you did not get one, it's because you are not registered as a Democrat or Republican. It means you are registered as an independent. Now, mine's different than yours because I'm in a different town. But here's what you have to do. Each line is one office. You will see it. So the first is your choice for president. On our ballots in New Jersey, it's just Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders. That's voting for the delegates and for the candidate. U.S. Senator. If you're a Democrat, you're going to get either Cory Booker or Lawrence Ham. If you're a registered Republican, you're going to have Republican candidates. Same for the House of Representatives. Same for the freeholders. There are 3 sets of freeholder candidates that are running. The first line is the Democratic Committee of Bergen County's choice. Those are their endorsed candidates. Second is the Not Me US. That is an offshoot. It's a liberal group. And the Real Democrats, Real Change, also, that's who that is. Who's over here? For the House of Representatives. Again, the first line, first column, is the county Democratic endorsed candidates. And then the rest are, and I'm not saying who to vote for, who not to, I'm just explaining it to you so that you understand who you're voting for. So you fill that out, black pen, circle in the little dots. You're then going to put it in this envelope, all right, that says instructions to mail-in voter. Fill it in, you're going to put it in there. You're going to seal it, pull that off and seal it. Now, you have to fill out this side. It's your name, your address. You have to write your Democrat or Republican on it, and you're going to sign it. If someone helps you with it, they have to sign their names also. Nothing gets detached. This then goes in to the larger envelope to the Bergen County Board of Elections. Okay. There's another tape there. Okay. You're going to seal that. If someone is bringing this for you, you need to make sure that they sign their names. Okay. Put your return address on and mail it. You don't need a stamp, just put it in the mailbox. You will see that your name and address are on the other side. That's how you do it. Mail it, and then your vote will be counted. Please, please make sure when you're doing this that you fill out this side of the inside envelope. If you do not fill this in, it will not be counted. And get used to it because we may have vote by mail in November. So these are due back, I don't even know. July 7th. They have to, it has to be postmarked no later than July 7th. So you should have all gotten them, those who are registered to a party. my big suggestion to you is to do it this week so you do not forget. If anybody needs any additional help, please call me. I cannot tell you who to vote for, nor would I, but I can help you with the actual mailing process to make sure that it's correct. So that's important. What else? Okay, so I think my favorite story of the week has to be the Chicago police. There were 8 or 9 of them who, while a strip mall was under siege, really, and they were looting, these police officers went into a congressional campaign office, hung out, making coffee for themselves, making microwave popcorn. I'm sure you've all seen the videos, and clearly not doing their jobs. But what I thought was so great about this and so ridiculous was there was Bobby Rush's office. Now, I don't expect everyone to know who Bobby Rush is, but I certainly would hope that members of the Chicago Police Department would know who Bobby Rush is. Bobby Rush is one of the founders of the Illinois Black Panthers. He has been in Congress since 1992, I think. He is no fan of the police, my friends. And I was watching this and I'm thinking, that's the office you went to hide out in? First of all, you would know he would have cameras. You could see them, actually. And you know he's not going to support you hanging out in his office. He doesn't like the police. So I hope that they are all fired. Not just for not doing their job, but frankly for being stupid. That's the last place you would go if you had a uniform on. He, of course, obviously denounced them and their activities, but it looks like he's actually asking for them to pay him back for popcorn and coffee, which is awesome, okay? But that really has to be my sort of favorite irony of the week, that the police would go to Bobby Rush's office, to hide. And that's what they were doing. Okay, we had another shooting in Atlanta, and of a 27-year-old African-American man, black man, which is really disturbing because he had been at a party and he was drinking, and he fell asleep in Wendy's parking lot near the drive-thru. So he must have been loaded. But you don't get killed for drunk driving. So the police officer came and woke him up, and from the video you see, everything was pretty calm. He admitted he had been drinking at a party, and then he gets a little loud, and the police officer tases him. So then there's a scuffle, and he apparently gets the taser in his hand somehow. I'm not defending what he did. However, he then obviously realizes that he's in trouble, and he runs away. And he was killed. He was shot twice in the back. In the back. So obviously at that point he was not endangering you, the police officer, in any way. He was running away. Why would you take your gun out at that point? You have his car, you know who he is. You also know that he's loaded, so probably isn't going to get too far if he fell asleep in the car. So why not just go get an arrest warrant, go pick him up later? Obviously at some point he's going to go home. Instead, he's dead. I'm not defending someone drunk driving, but obviously he knew he was drunk enough that he pulled over, which is not an irresponsible thing to do. I don't know anyone who drinks who at some point hasn't said, wait a minute, I shouldn't be behind the wheel of this car. And so I think he did the right thing by pulling over and going to sleep. And instead he lost his life for that. and this is not the first shooting in the back thing that we've seen the police involved in. You know his name, you have his information, you had his car. There was absolutely no reason to shoot this man. None. I'm not a police officer, I could have found him. So, of course, we've had more violent protests in Atlanta since then. And I sort of think that that story is really indicative of what the problem is. If that was me, or you, or somebody who was white, the police probably would have been laughing, saying, well, we know her address, we'll just go pick her up. I don't think I would be dead. Though they've now taken it all off the air, I think we've all seen episodes of Cops where somebody's really loaded and they run away and the police laugh because they know who you are. If you've produced your identification and you have your car, it really doesn't take CSI or the Pink Panther, to find where you are. It has to be ace detective to find that person. And instead, this 27-year-old man is dead. Tulsa, Oklahoma, the president has planned a campaign rally, which the Oklahoma authorities, who by the way are Republicans, and Tulsa, they don't want it. Okay? But they're going anyway. But I'm sure you've seen this. This is my other favorite story. That they're having people sign waivers that if you go to the rallies, you get COVID, you cannot sue the Trump campaign, the RNC, the venue they're having it at, the Oklahoma Republicans. You can't sue anybody. Well, I thought that they told us that this was a hoax, right? And it was all going to be gone soon, and it was just like a flu. So if it's not that serious, why are you having people sign waivers? Okay? Which leads me to the next thing that's, to me, related, but maybe you won't see it. The new book about Melania Trump. Okay, so her husband gets elected, and I know you've seen this. Her husband gets elected, and she, President of the United States, and she clearly wanted no part of that from day one, but she immediately renegotiated her prenup. So what does that tell me? That tells me that you already know you're leaving him when this is over. You already know. Now, supposedly the anonymous source said, well, she was worried about Barron. But if you didn't already have one foot out the door, you would have waited a little bit to renegotiate that prenup. But she did immediately. So, yeah. So maybe we'll start a pool closer to Election Day. How many days after he's out does Melania actually leave and file for divorce? All right, so start thinking about it. We'll do something. We'll do something fun with that when the time comes. This morning, the Supreme Court ruled that under the Civil Rights Act of 1964, lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgendered people are protected from job discrimination. So that was sort of a shocking ruling, especially because it was 6-3, with Neil Gorsuch and John Roberts joining the rest of the majority. So I was sort of surprised when I saw Gorsuch. I wasn't so surprised with Roberts, but I was very surprised with Gorsuch. So I haven't read the opinion yet because it just came down before I started recording this. And they also are refusing to hear the Trump administration's suit against California for the sanctuary cities. I'm not sure whether they even wrote a decision on that or just said we're not hearing it. But that's also somewhat surprising because that would have to be a majority for them to not hear that case. So maybe this Supreme Court isn't really what they thought they were getting, which is, we all know, has happened in the past. Okay, now Seattle. We have Chaz, the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, which they changed earlier this morning. Their name now is CHOP, which is Capitol Hill Organized Protest. So basically, Black Lives Matter protesters have taken over as what amounts to about a 6-block neighborhood and a park within Seattle, and they've declared it a police-free zone, basically a government-free zone, that they are running that area of Seattle. They issued a set of demands yesterday, which I have the list of. They want the abolition of the police department and the criminal justice apparatus. They want the city of Seattle to disallow the operations of ICE. They are demanding that in the transitionary period between now and the dismantlement of the Seattle Police Department, that the use of armed force be completely banned. And that means the police that will still be there, no guns, no batons, no riot shields, no chemical weapons. They want all children out of jail, and they want the police out of the schools. They want the federal government to launch a full-scale investigation into past and current cases of brutality and police brutality in Seattle and Washington. They want all closed cases reopened that have been sent to the Office of Police Accountability. They want reparations for victims of police brutality. They want the city of Seattle to make the names of officers involved in police brutality complaints a matter of public record. They demand a retrial of all people of color currently serving terms for violent crime. They want decriminalization of the acts of protesters and amnesty for protesters, particularly those involved in the George Floyd rebellion, that's what they're calling it, against the terrorist cell that previously occupied the area known as the Seattle Police Department. They want all protesters arrested during these protests to be released immediately. They want the city and the state to release any prisoner currently serving time for marijuana-related offenses, and they want the record expunged. They want any prisoner currently serving time for resisting arrest to be released. They want prisoners currently serving time to be given the full and unrestricted right to vote. They want to end all prosecutorial immunity for police officers. They want to abolish youth prisons and privately owned for-profit prisons. They want the Seattle Police Department, between now and the time of their abolition, to empty the lost and found and return property owned by citizens of the city. I'm not going to read every one of them. They are demanding that every Seattle Police Department officer have their body cams on at all times, and that then become a matter of public record. The money that was used for the police should be going into socialized health and medicine for the city of Seattle, free public housing, public education, naturalization services for immigrants living here and undocumented. They also demand the degentrification of Seattle, and they're insisting on rent control. They want to restore the city funding for arts and culture. They want free college for the state of Washington. Until the abolition of the Seattle Police Department, they want a prohibition on the homeless sweeps that go on when they go and move homeless people out of one area to another. They want to eliminate all financial obligations for anybody who wants to run for office. They demand that hospitals and care facilities in Seattle employ black doctors and nurses specifically to care for black patients. They demand the people of Seattle seek out and support black-owned businesses. They're demanding the city create an entirely separate system staffed by mental health experts to respond to 911 calls rather than the police. They want the history of Black and Native Americans to be given a significantly greater focus in the Washington State education curriculum. They demand that anti-bias training become a legal requirement for all jobs in the education system, as well as in medical profession and in the mass media. I don't know how they expect the city to do that. They want all monuments dedicated to historical figures of the Confederacy removed. So those are their demands. Now, it's a pretty extensive list. It all starts with the dissolution of the Seattle Police Department. There is a large cry for that everywhere around this country among the leftists, not the regular Black Lives protesters. But it is gaining some traction, and I do think, I mean, obviously this is a very specific group who are extremists. But the demilitarizing the police theme is actually gaining a lot of traction and a lot of support. When you see these protests, and I'm not talking about in DC, but you see these protests around the country in small towns and cities, and you see the amount of firepower that police departments have. Why? Why? These aren't high crime areas. And obviously we see that they're pulling their guns way too often. So I suspect that there is going to be a move legislatively in the states and in Congress to cut funding to police departments. And I think there'll be an evening out where we're going to increase some mental health services and decrease funding for the police. I just don't see why a small city police force has to have semi-automatic submachine guns. They're almost like tanks, those Hummer things they have, and all this riot gear, and it's not necessary. So I have a feeling that that's something that both the right and the left can agree upon. And I am pro-union, but I also think that you're going to see a lot of support for de-unionizing the police forces, because the police unions are protecting the bad cops. And I hate saying that, I have police in my family and friends, but they're protecting bad cops. And that has been happening for too long. And the only difference between now and 20 years ago, 10 years ago, is that now it's all being recorded. So we're seeing it. And that's what's enraging people, that I don't think anyone wants their tax money going to somebody shooting a non-violent offender for running away from the police. And that's what happened in Atlanta last weekend. An unarmed, non-violent offender was shot in the back and killed by the police. An unarmed offender, non-violent, whose name they knew. The video's disturbing. The whole thing is. And I think that I'm not the only person in the world who thinks this is just out of hand and wrong. There was absolutely no reason to shoot that guy. No reason for George Floyd to be dead. No reason for Breonna Taylor to be dead. And Trayvon Martin, and go on and on. Eric Garner, there's so many names, and I've read the names to you before. But even in the midst of these protests around the country, it still happened. So something has to be done. And I would support demilitarizing them. There's no reason for it. And I actually support the body cams, and they should be on all the time. And they should be public record. And I don't know what else can be done. But now, let's talk about something good. I am more and more hopeful every day that we are going to get rid of the current occupant of the White House in November. Now, I know that the Democrats and some Republicans are very concerned about foreign intervention in the election, and they're concerned about some of the nonsense that went on the last time going on again. But most of you know, I used to do campaigns, and so my focus is always on the numbers and how the numbers work. And so I pulled out my old notes and I looked at 2016, 2012, 2008. And I do not see how this person can keep the White House numerically. Why do I say that? Okay. There is no state that Secretary Clinton won 4 years ago that is really in play at all. All right. So that means that Vice President Biden is starting with 232 electoral votes. Well, possibly Nevada or Virginia could be, but right now the numbers aren't showing that those are in play at all. But those are always iffy depending on what goes on within the states and voter turnout and stuff. So, but I don't think that there's any move from voters to the current occupant. I think there's a move away from him, from people, but I haven't seen one poll since he won that election showing people who voted for Mrs. Clinton suddenly saying, well, now I'm going to vote for to re-elect. I don't like saying his name. I know I have to sometimes, but I don't like saying his name. I've not seen one thing showing that. So even if it's by half a point or 5 votes, I think that the Vice President Biden can count on 232 as the base. Now, when you look at, I'm going to flip my papers here so I don't give the wrong numbers. One of the states people talk about is Ohio, all right? But I actually don't think that the Democrats should spend any money there, okay? There's no Senate race, there's no governor's race. There's we should spend some on some congressional races, but we should not spend money there. Trump won Ohio by 446,000 votes, almost 447,000 votes, 500,000, give or take. Gary Johnson and Jill Stein combined only got about 220,000 votes. So you would really be looking to convince in that state about 240,000 voters to flip. I'm not sure that if you break it down dollar by dollar, it would be worth spending huge amounts there. Now, there will be money spent there because part of Pennsylvania has some Ohio media markets that, they cross over and stuff. So that's fine. And Ohio would be a bonus. But where we need to focus on, what the Democrats need to focus on, what Vice President Biden needs to focus on, 3 states: Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. That's it. All right. Why do I say that? 4 years ago, Mrs. Clinton, see how I avoid saying his name? Mrs. Clinton lost Pennsylvania by 44,292 votes. Jill Stein got 49,000 votes. And Gary Johnson, who was the Libertarian candidate, got 146,000 votes. So between the two of them, they took, now I got to do math. Hold on. 46 and 50. 210,000 votes, give or take. Gary Johnson voters were Republican and independents who couldn't vote for Donald Trump, but didn't want to vote for Hillary Clinton. Jill Stein voters were pure leftists, a lot of Sanders supporters who were mad and felt like the game was rigged against them, whatever. I don't think that any of those people have changed their minds. I don't think the Johnson people, the Johnson voters, are actual libertarians. I think they were anti-Trump Republicans. And I think that Vice President Biden is more palatable to them than Mrs. Clinton was. So if she can take a third of Jill Stein, if he can take a third of Jill Stein's votes, because Sanders isn't in the mix this time, and a third of Gary Johnson's votes in Pennsylvania, we flip Pennsylvania. That's 18, that's 20 electoral votes. So then he needs 18. So Michigan. Mrs. Clinton lost Michigan by only 10,704 votes. That's it. Gary Johnson got 172,000 votes, and Jill Stein got 51,000 votes. Now, complicating that is also in Michigan this year, there is a competitive Senate race. So if you have a competitive presidential race and a competitive Senate race, that's very good for the Democrats because we can put some money in there for a big get out the vote, plus the state party will put money in. So you increase voter turnout, plus you don't have Gary Johnson to contend with this time, or Jill Stein, or the Sandinistas' dislike of the party process and the dislike of Mrs. Clinton and all of that. So that's only 10,704 votes. We don't need to register one new person to flip that state. We don't need to register one new person to flip Pennsylvania either. Plus, in the cities, I think we are going to see a higher voter turnout because of the protests and the absolute deep dislike of the current occupant of the White House. So that gives Vice President Biden 36 of the 38 he needs. Then Wisconsin. In Wisconsin again, Mrs. Clinton lost Wisconsin by 22,748 votes. That's all. Gary Johnson got 106,000 votes. Jill Stein got 31,000 votes. That's an easy flip. And I know I've been saying this to you for a while, but we are only talking in these three states a margin of victory of 77,744 people. I know I'm throwing numbers at you and I apologize, but that's nothing. The entire election is 78,000 people. And you don't have the Clinton baggage, if you will. I don't like saying that. I love Secretary Clinton. None of this would be going on that's going on right now. None of the nonsense if she had been elected. And it will always make me sad because I believe that she was quite possibly the most prepared person to be president of the United States, other than probably Richard Nixon. Unfortunately, Mr. Nixon was insane, so and paranoid, and that ruined his presidency. But as far as knowledge and knowing what to do, both domestically and foreign policy wise, it saddens me to think of what the Clinton presidency would be right now versus this narcissistic driven drama that we are forced to watch every day. But yeah, so it's 77,744 votes. That's all. And I really do not believe that that Vice President Biden can't pick those votes up among people who we know are going to vote. Because that's the other thing. If you are going out in 2016 in that election and you are voting for Gary Johnson, I'm not going to talk about Jill Stein because she's Green Party. That's a whole leftist thing. They're going to come out and vote, some of them. Gary Johnson getting the numbers that he got were all anti-Trump voters. They're not true libertarians. They, again, I know I'm repeating myself, they were Republicans who did not like Trump, would not vote for him, but did not like Mrs. Clinton and couldn't bring themselves to vote, but they go out and vote. With Johnson not there and Biden being the candidate who would be acceptable to that group of people, and I would bet if we got a real demographic breakdown, I would bet they're men. Not blue collar, they are white collar men. Biden is okay for them. So we're not even talking about flipping all of them. We're talking about flipping a handful of Johnson voters. That's all. And now if he picks an African American woman, and I'm hoping it's Kamala Harris, that's my preference, but I'm okay with anybody that's going to bring him what he needs. If he picks her, though, I think you will see an increase in African American voters from the last election, which will help in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And that's the game. Now, I happen to think there are two other states that could be in play, depending how this shakes down. All right, one is Arizona. Okay, Mrs. Clinton lost Arizona by 91,000 votes. Gary Johnson and Jill Stein combined got 140,000 votes, so that's a little tighter. However, there is a competitive Senate race in Arizona with Martha McSally, is the Republican who is running. All right, Martha McSally lost the last Senate race to Kyrsten Sinema, who's in the Senate now. The governor then appointed McSally to the open seat, which was McCain's. There are a lot of voters in Arizona that are really mad that she was put in the Senate because they don't like her. So that's another wild card. So, and I can't imagine that people are going to come out and vote against McSally and then vote for Trump. They're not going to do it. Those are going to be Biden voters. And so even if he doesn't win Arizona, when the numbers start coming in and we get closer and closer and that Senate race starts heating up, the Republicans are going to be forced to spend a lot of money in Arizona to hold that seat, which I'm not sure they can hold the Senate seat. But every vote coming out against McSally is going to go to Biden, not to Trump. So that could be a surprise electoral state for us. And North Carolina. And I've had the dream forever that North Carolina is going to flip, and it has over time. I mean, when I was in school, Jesse Helms was the senator from North Carolina, and there was that horribly ugly Senate race, Helms versus Jim Hunt, who had been the governor. From that time on, though, you've had a lot of Northeasterners have moved to North Carolina because of the Research Triangle and a lot of other things. We've had Democratic senators, we've had Democratic governors. That is becoming a competitive state. The problem with North Carolina is voter turnout among African Americans and voter turnout among transplanted Northeasterners. But this year, we have the presidential race, we also have a competitive governor's race and a competitive Senate race. So Mrs. Clinton lost that state by 173,000 votes. Johnson and Stein didn't do percentage-wise well. They combined, they got about 142,000 votes. But I think the turnout is going to be huge in North Carolina this year because of the Senate and the governor's race, not just the presidency. And so I have to think that if the National Party and the candidate, obviously candidate Biden, spends money down there on get out the vote and has an African American woman candidate as vice president, I think we might be able to squeak a victory out of North Carolina. Or again, at least it will be competitive where the Republicans will be forced to spend a lot of money there. The other state is, as always, Florida. I hate Florida. Well, politically, because you never know. But Mrs. Clinton only lost that state by 112,000 votes. There was a lot of dislike in Florida for both Trump and Clinton. And if, I didn't write it down, but memory serves, the two of them had high negatives in Florida. So nobody was thrilled with either of them in Florida. I'm still going to defend her and say I think that it was unfair, the treatment of Mrs. Clinton, but doesn't matter. That facts are the facts. They didn't like her, they didn't like him. Stein and Johnson got 271,000 votes. And Mrs. Clinton only lost the state by 112,000 votes. So Johnson got 207,000 votes himself. Again, that is very clear that they're not libertarians. They were anti-Trump, white-collar Republicans who didn't like Trump and still don't like him. I really think a lot of those votes are going to go to Vice President Biden. And so my take right now is be upbeat. Don't worry yet. I know every day somebody comes to me and says, he can't win again, he can't win again. And I also know that the Republicans the institutional Republicans are very nervous about this because they're looking at the same numbers I am. It's 78,000 votes. I just can't believe that we're not going to be able to flip that. And I always, like I said, if I get nervous about these things, I always go back to the numbers. And there are times I'll just say, I don't think the numbers are there. In this case, I think the numbers are there. I think they've always been there for Joe Biden, which is, as you all know, I've been supporting Joe Biden in this since he announced, because I thought that he was the natural person to be able to flip those voters. And it does seem like so far,